So you're on path, you're on course, you're working towards something. It feels inevitable. It feels like, you're going to have this big change or success is imminent, and then all of a sudden, bam, something happens. And perhaps it feels like a pattern that you're repeating. Perhaps it just feels like it's never going to happen. And perhaps you have felt that in the past. And we've talked about sabotaging, whether you're sabotaging your success or sabotaging your failure. We've covered that. And so I'm not going to dive into that again. I'll put the link to that video below so you can watch it if that resonates. But today I want to talk about, you know, what happens in that moment just before success is inevitable. Success, you know, is your new reality, and how we often take a U-turn or a left turn just before that moment and why that happens. Some people will call this a test, and that's not language I use. You've heard me say it's an "are you sure, are you ready" moment. And if there's any part of you that says no to that, then something is going to happen to make whatever that success is for you not come to life, because you're not fully aligned. There's a part of you that's not on board. And for me, it almost feels like Newton's laws of the bigger the transformation, the bigger the moment, the change I'm about to have, the bigger the equal the resistance is to not allow that to happen if there's a part of me that's not yet on board. And if it's a repeating thing, it means that we haven't reached the core yet. And so the way to unlock this is to really get curious, to really dive into what is it that is not on board and why. And the more we judge, or the more we resist, or the more we don't embrace the part of us that's not on board, the more that resistance is going to grow. So the key is to just get curious about what that part of you is, and um and why they're not on board. Now, we've talked about up till now the parts of you being maybe like a person, a version of you at an age, whether that's in the past, whether that's present, whether it's even in the future. uh there's a part of you that made a choice because something happened. Maybe you experienced trauma and there was a choice made to protect you. Maybe um people said some words to you over and over and over again, and you made a choice to believe a certain thing about yourself in response to these words being said to you over and over and over again. Like, maybe you know your style isn't good, or your clothes aren't expensive enough, or whatever, and so now you have this feeling of undeserving, um of undeserving of wealth. Like, you don't look the part, and therefore you aren't the part. Maybe some people said some words for you, and so now you talk really soft because you made the choice that you didn't deserve to be heard, or to be seen, or to be loved, or to be whatever. Maybe you've made these choices about yourself. And the reason why I say you made a choice is not to, I hate this phrase, but victim shame. It's to actually put the power back in your hands. Because if you made the choice to feel a certain way or believe a certain thing or think a certain thing, then you have a choice to not do that anymore. And if it's a choice, it makes it a little bit easier to change, right? So we can make different choices. We can empower ourselves. We can um, resist the urge to judge or feel guilty or feel resentment because we made that choice and we did it for a reason. Usually that reason is protection. Usually that reason is a shield or a guard or a literal, keep you safe in a certain situation. And and so those were good choices at the time. There's no judgment needed. And maybe a different choice is required now. So get curious about what the part of you is that is resisting, and get curious about why so that you can make a different choice. Now, sometimes these parts of you are not beings, they're not a version of you at a certain age. Sometimes it's sort of a residual of choices that you made. So maybe there's a physical energy block in your body, or maybe your uh, nervous system is out of alignment or is in crazy anxious mode or something along those lines. Um, and so, maybe it's not about asking this part of you, this version of you that is not out of alignment. Maybe it's feeling into um, why you're feeling this way, or where this is coming from, or what the origin point was, or what the choice was that created this, physical manifestation in your body and, whatever system it's in. And so to just think about these different parts of you, these different systems in your body, and where there feels uh, resistance to what you're trying to do or what you're calling in, and getting really curious about the why or the when or the what, so that you can make a different choice. I recently was on my own exploration of this, and I was feeling overly grounded. Traditionally we think of grounding as a good thing, and I felt super dense in my body. I felt like I didn't just have cords into the ground, but I had like trunks, and I just felt super heavy and dense, like I couldn't move, like I was weighted down. And I started to get curious about why I was feeling that way. And what really came in was that I was holding on to um, past innovations, past projects, past creations that um, weren't aligned anymore. And I was just holding space for them. And I was also holding space for intentions for, like, I had set the intention to hold space for intentions for my clients and for my people. And as a result of that, holding that intention, I ended up taking on and holding space for their limitations and resistance that were in the way of their own intentions. And that wasn't part of my intention. So as I started to work through where these were in my body, where these were in my field, and started to actively work with myself and my teams and the parts of me to release them and to hold space for only that which I intended to hold space for, then I started to feel lighter and more energetic and just able to focus more because I didn't have all this stuff in my space that wasn't for me to hold. So I also want to point out that my intention was good, was to hold space uh, for the intentions that I'm helping people manifest. And yet, as part of that really good intention, there was a side effect that I didn't intend and that I didn't want and that wasn't working for me. And I don't have judgment over the fact that I was holding on to these things that weren't serving me anymore. Instead, I just was like, okay, cool, that happened. Let's release it and move forward. And here we are. And that's what made it easier to release, to do the work, to let it go, is because I didn't essentially hold on to it with the judgment that I was holding on to it in the first place. So you could be observing, or you could be holding on to things that are actually quite good. You could have made decisions that are good. I would argue that all of your decisions were, in fact, good at the time with the information and the resources you had available to you at that time. And that was great. That served its purpose. And um, and even if the thing is a good thing, it might still need to be reworked, rethought. A new decision might need to be made. A new agreement might need to be made. So just really think about getting curious about um, what part of you has resistance and getting curious about why. Now, some of you mentioned that you resort back to your mind. Well, your mind is a part of you. So, what does your mind need to feel on board with what you're creating? Like, your mind is super great at doing research, at crunching the numbers, at knowing things, um, and uh, storing information. And information, just like anything, shifts and changes when we learn new things. So maybe you have some information stored that is outdated and needs a bit of an update, needs a bit of a operating system update or a reboot or whatever to allow in um, some new information. And also, maybe your um, intellectual mind is not the system to make this decision. So I have a very analytical brain. I have a brain that likes to know things, to research things, to get the data, to make scientific equations out of things, to get the proof. I also have a very intuitive brain, and my intuitive brain is very creative, and it has knowledge that my intellectual brain can't seem to find. And my intellectual brain wants to tell my intuitive brain that that doesn't make sense, or that isn't right, or you can't possibly know that. And what I, as a conscious being, do is I allow both of them to have voices. I witness both of them as a, a worthy, loved part of me with information to give me, and I get to discern which one I'm going to use in this particular situation, which one's information feels like the one to use. And a lot of times what I will do is I will use my intellectual brain to do the research, to get all the numbers, to put my options in front of me, and then I will use my intuitive brain to make the decision, to be like, it's this one. And because both had a role and a seat at the table, if you will, then it's easier to quiet the intellectual brain when the intuitive brain chooses the option that, doesn't have the numbers that the intellectual brain would say this is the better choice. And my conscious self can say I'm going with this direction or that direction, and I can usually discern why. Like, there's usually a reason coming to me intuitively as to why I'm making one decision or the other. So again, judgment is resistance. Guilt, resentment are also resistance. And so try to not allow those things to come up. Even if they come up, try to observe them rather than embody them. When you observe them rather than embody them, you see them for what they are. I see that I have judgment over this. I see that I have resentment or guilt over this. And you can further be curious about why, because there might be another layer underneath why this is coming up. That could be useful information for you. So your intellectual brain can do that. It can do the research. It can ask all the questions. It can seek to understand why this is happening, when the origin point was, etc., etc. And you can then make choices. Now you have the information to know the direction to go in, to bring that part of you into alignment. So to accept all the parts of you as equally worthy and loved, to witness them as parts of yourself, a loving divine being, and to accept them for their strengths and to use them for their strengths, and to discern when to use what information. So, you know, the ego, who is a major protector in our system, it is important to use the ego in certain situations. If you're standing at gunpoint and your ego is giving you instructions on how to diffuse the situation to keep you safe, I would take that. I would listen to it. I would do what it said. And if you're uh if you're in another situation of that where you know you're in imminent threat and you're getting sound guidance as to get out of that threat, then that is a useful place to use that information. And so to say the ego is bad and we should never use it is a myth, because all parts of you exist for a reason. And so getting curious about what that reason is your key to bringing yourself into alignment for the thing that you want, and also for leveraging the different parts of you in the way that most resonates with their skills. Think of all the parts of you as your team at a company, and you're the boss, and you're taking your team and you're aligning their skill set with the tasks at hand. And you're saying, okay, I'm going to give you these responsibilities because this is what you're good at. And I'm going to give you these responsibilities because this is what you're good at. And when needed, I'm going to shift your role and responsibilities because we've grown, or we have a new mission or a new vision, and this is what is required for alignment. So hopefully that has been helpful, and I will see you in the next video.